Hey there gamers, DreamcastGuy here. Today we're talking about the Nintendo Switch 2 because this has been by far the most controversial gadget in all of 2025. People are actually talking about boycotts, how bad the graphics are, how big the price tag is. But despite the hatred, there's like full-on YouTube channels just dedicated onto hating Nintendo. But surprisingly, they just revealed the sales metrics. The first couple months of the Nintendo Switch 2, this is now the fastest selling game console ever. Hands down. It is literally the fastest, most explosive console of all time. And I want to talk about that because honestly, I was wrong. I went on the record specifically saying I think the Nintendo Switch 2 will be successful eventually, but I think it's going to have a very slow start. I went on record specifically with my prediction that I thought it was going to have a decent launch and then slow way down before the holidays, mostly because honestly everything is getting so expensive. A $500 gaming gadget seems like it would not have the audience it did. This thing is going nuclear. In fact, it's selling so fast, Nintendo has actually redone their market predictions. You know, basically you say, oh, we're expecting to sell like 12 million units. They have upped it by 4 million units. This thing is selling so fast, they're essentially having to tell their own like stockholders and stuff, hey, it's actually more successful than our most optimistic predictions. I want to take a look at this because I got to admit that being wrong about this, I'm shocked. I am shocked that this is just literally blowing every record out of the water instantly. Let's get into it. Hi, hope you're having a great day. And if you could please give this video a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and please keep dreaming. So this is the thing. This is still just wild to me. In its first few months on sale, Nintendo Switch 2 has now outpaced the sales of the PS4 and the PS5 and the original Switch, and Nintendo is only expecting things to get better. Now, let's talk first about the controversies. Not because I'm trying to start off negative, but because I think it's interesting how much it seems like the games and the fan base have overcome the negative buzz. It does seem like there is a lot of people online that were very much praying for the downfall of the Nintendo Switch 2. And it's interesting that I feel like the two biggest controversies that have been such a cloud is game key cards, first off. Like, historically, when you bought a Nintendo Switch game, part of the fun of it is that you get an actual physical game. Like, you know, while Nintendo is pretty much the only people right now where if you buy it, you really get the game on a cart. Like, this is the entirety of Dragon Quest. This is it. I plug it in. There's no install other than like an update, but you can play this offline on a plane. Whereas PlayStation usually requires you to install like 80% of the game. I think now Xbox is getting in trouble because a lot of the Xbox physical games you buy, you're basically getting 100 megabytes, not 100 gigs, 100 megabytes of data. If you buy like basically a physical disc, there's nothing on it. It's essentially blank. And unfortunately, this generation, Nintendo has started to do that. Nintendo is basically selling you fake discs. They're called game key cards. You basically put in just a little card, or sometimes you just literally install it. Sometimes you literally buy an empty box and it's just like a download code in it. This has caused a lot of anger, especially because some of the biggest Nintendo Switch 1 fans were those physical collectors. People that actually left PC, left console gaming and stuff because they wanted to have like an actual physical game collection, and only Nintendo would let you do that. Now, obviously, the bigger price was all about this. This was the primary controversy, the drop the price talk. Switch 2 was always going to be $450. Games were going to be $80 without the tariffs. That's just Nintendo being greedy. A lot of people have talked about this, the Nintendo age of greed. The fact that it does seem like Nintendo, beyond anybody else, everybody's raising prices bit by bit, but it does feel like Nintendo is the one that, to me, feels like it went up the most. You guys can disagree, but I always like the fact that, honestly, the original Nintendo Switch being so incredibly cheap. I mean, I bought, a Switch Lite on sale for, I think, $170, and I still play that thing constantly at the gym. It's so fun to just play it while I'm, on the treadmill. But I always like the fact that the Nintendo Switch 1 being so cheap, its controllers being cheap, its accessories being cheap, I like that. I always thought the Nintendo Switch 1 was like that budget gadget to be like almost a gateway drug to more expensive gaming if you want it. Whereas the Nintendo Switch 2 is so expensive. This controller costs $100. This is the Switch 2 controller. Now, it does have a great battery life. It's a very, 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 very good controller. I'm not going to pretend it's a bad product. But for $100, that's still an extremely expensive price tag that I assumed would lead to lower sales. And it turns out, no. Over 10 million Nintendo Switch 2 sold in just under 4 months. Still the fastest selling game console ever. Just insane levels of success. The Switch effect is still alive and well. I love the console, so happy to see this success. Now bring on Samus. This is my buddy Rule of Two Review Rob. This guy is a massive Metroid fan, and he basically bought it day one, specifically being like, all right, I'm going to go wherever plays Metroid Prime 4 in the best graphics possible. But some people sort of forget this idea. The Switch effect. There was this crazy thing last gen where you really could not predict how well something would blow up on the Nintendo Switch 1. Like truly, you see a game that have the worst graphics, the crappiest frame rate, honestly, laughably bad ports at times. But when it went to the Nintendo Switch, it would sell like crazy because people were still excited to play it portably, to take games and play it portably. And I think that the Nintendo Switch 2 is in a way even maximizing that, where it becomes, okay, which game do I want to buy Silksong on, right? I can only buy Silksong one place. What's the best place to buy it? Well, I'm going to buy it on the place where I can play it on the go. I'm going to buy it wherever I can, just pick it up. I've got this bigger screen. I've got my cool automatic Joy-Cons and stuff, right? The Switch effect is so immeasurably massive. It still just blows my mind that honestly it is so crazy. Now, Nintendo Switch 2 has revised its forecast from 15 million to 19 million units. I'll be honest, off the top of my head, I cannot remember the last time I've seen this. I mean, I'm being straight up here. I'm not being hyperbolic. I genuinely cannot remember the last time I remember a company revising sales metrics up. 99.999% of the time, you're scaling it down. You're basically saying, oh, this is not going as good as we thought. Oh, let's scale it down. Look at this. Sony will soon announce the PlayStation 2 sold. A lot of people like to make the joke that whenever there's like record-breaking sales of the Nintendo Switch 1, Sony comes out and says, oh, the PS2 is still selling better. The PS2 is still selling better. Look at this. Drop the price people weren't the actual demographic of Switch 2 owners. I mean, I got to admit that I was very much on the drop the price bandwagon. I still do genuinely think this thing is way too expensive. I mean, maybe not way too expensive, but I am still on the camp that I wish the Nintendo Switch 2 was cheaper. And I'm just going to put this in here real quick, right? I'm just going to say that I have said in multiple videos now that I think the first next-gen console that manages to get down to the $300 price point is going to completely take over the entire industry. And I'm not being hyperbolic. I straight up think that if they find a way to get the Nintendo Switch 2 down to the price of the Nintendo Switch 1, like what the Switch 1 was at launch, it's going to become a plague. It is going to take over everything. Every game is going to be made and optimized for the Nintendo Switch 2. The Nintendo Switch 2 is going to have the highest sales and stuff like that. And the reason I think that is that a lot of people just are straight up broke. Even the best estimates, the most accurate sounding leaks, it seems like the PlayStation 6, when it comes out in 2027, is very likely going to cost about $600 to $700 on the low end, right? So my thought is that if they manage to get the price of the Nintendo Switch 2 down to $300, which of course this is a pie in the sky dream. Typically consoles will be getting more expensive, not less expensive, but let's be optimistic. If they drop the price of the Nintendo Switch 2 down by the time that the PS6 comes out, I think this is going to be an even bigger juggernaut going forward, right? It's still just wild to think about that. The original Switch took 9 months to sell 10 million units, and even that was considered to be such a gangbusters console. Nintendo Switch 2 selling 10.36 thousand units in just 3 months. Look at that. Remember when everybody was hating how expensive it was and said they'd stick to the original? Switch 2 moving PS2 numbers already. Man, it's just wild. It's just so wild to me. Nintendo Switch 2 sold 10 million units. It's the fastest game console sales ever. So everyone that talked about not buying it, they'll boycott the price and quality, but then the Switch is up and they buy the whole damn thing. Interesting. I do think that there is a lot of people where the sticker shock was real. I do think there is a chunk of people that didn't buy it at launch, but then ended up buying it a month, 2 months, 3 months later, right? I had a lot of friends personally. I have two friends. I have a very large friend group. I have two friends that actually bought the Nintendo Switch 2. Only two. And both of them bought it actually because of Splatoon 2. This is dead serious. The main thing I've seen, like the people online talking about and in my own friend group, they like the Switch 1 upgrades. The fact that there's automatic patches that actually make a lot of games run better, especially Splatoon 3. Splatoon 3 runs way better. It actually looks better and everything on the Nintendo Switch 2. And a lot of my friends that play primarily like one game, it does seem like there's a lot of Nintendo Switch owners that only play Animal Crossing or only play a particular thing like Xenoblade Chronicles or whatever, right? And if you say, hey, this upgrades that, this makes it run better, people are going to go, okay, it plays it better, I'll buy it, right? To them, it's an easy zero-sum upgrade, right? This is so wild to me. Here's the last thing I want to look at because it is so funny to me. Mario Kart World sold almost 10 million units. Donkey Kong Bonanza, almost 3.5 million units. Now, I've gone on record, I actually do not like either of these games very much. I know. I actually think they're both fine. It's just that I liked both of their predecessors more. Donkey Kong Bonanza, the previous studio that did their previous game was actually Mario Kart Odyssey. Why am I saying that? Mario Odyssey. Why did I put the word kart in there? Mario Odyssey, which is one of my favorite Marios of all time. So I just didn't like Donkey Kong Bonanza. I'm not going to say it's a bad game. Obviously, it's a fantastic game for others. In fact, I think it's nominated for Game of the Year by the Golden Joystick, which to me seems a bit wild. But this to me shows the fact that everybody is buying the pack-in. Everybody was buying the Mario Kart World bundle because $50 more to get an $80 game, right? I got to say that I am still just blown away by this success. Truly. I truly could not have predicted this. I mean, clearly I didn't predict this, but the Switch effect cannot be understated. I'm super, super shocked, and I'm wrong. I will totally admit it. I'm taking the L. I was wrong as hell about the Nintendo Switch 2 success. Wow. How do you guys feel about it? Tell me your thoughts, and how do you feel about the Nintendo Switch 2 now, a couple months into it? I still admit it, mine's pretty covered in dust. If I'm being clear, I pretty much only play indies on mine. I'm still in that spot where I'll play something like Silksong. I'm really addicted right now to, Ball X Pit. Everybody's playing that game Ball X Pit. But for the most part, I'm still mostly playing on PC and PS5. But whenever good exclusives come out, I'm always down to get a good Switch 2 game. Thank you for watching. If you could, please give this video a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and please keep dreaming. I've actually seen some comments saying I talk better now that I got my final teeth, and I just wanted to thank you guys a lot. I'll be honest, it's been a bit difficult this year having to relearn to talk like 3 separate times after the bone grafts, after the bolts, after all the surgeries, after having all my teeth removed. So I appreciate the fact that now we're like 99% done. I appreciate the fact that honestly people giving me a positive feedback that I'm not, talking like a drunk sailor at 10 a.m.
Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.